1-800-449-8255. Z Clark Z Shark Show. And the Stooges Funhouse. 1970. Now, you're probably like, oh, Clark the Shark is going to rave and just love this album at 1-800-449-8255. And I really want to love the Stooges Funhouse because so many people back in the South Bay were like, Shark, you gotta love this album. And I'm like, I've listened to the Stooges Funhouse so much, man, and it always sounds the same. I mean, these songs have energy at 1-800-449-8255. But it ain't the Stooges' first album, man. 1969 and all that. I Want to Be Your Dog. These songs, what I really wanted to happen with the Stooges Funhouse is I wanted, hooks, choruses, something to happen at 1-800-449-8255. And these songs are really interesting for their time. The album, The Stooges Funhouse, is way ahead of 1970. Back in those times, though, this album in 1970 doesn't have that thing that the first Stooges album had. I Want to Be Your Dog, the Stooges, just all those killer songs, man. And on that first album, this album goes in a totally different direction. It's heavy, it's energetic, the drumming's killer, man. And these songs, for me are, I want to love it, man, but it's problematic album. Every song on this album drives me insane because, when I jammed with Meatwagon, we played every song on this album live. And I remember I got confused because I was like, wait, Down on the Street, Loose, TVI, Dirt. Dirt, of course, is, slow. And side one, these three songs are energetic, especially TVI. I love the energy of Iggy and the Stooges Funhouse. 1-800-449-8255. Of course, I like 1970. Of course, I love the title track, Funhouse and LA Blues. But you listen to this album, just like Clark the Shark, at 1-800-449-8255. And after listening to that first Stooges album, I mean, I don't care who you are, you're going to be disappointed at 1-800-449-8255 at Clark the Shark Show. Now, what isn't disappointing about this grungy, garage, underground, energetic album that really has no melody, no atmosphere, is it captures a horrible, out of tune, garage, grunge, punk, very punk rock, indie rock sound that's way ahead of its time in 1970. But Iggy Pop, Iggy and the Stooges Funhouse, for me, Clark the Shark, I mean, I gotta drink 50 Dr. Peppers or something, man, or 4 cups of coffee. I don't know why I've always struggled with Funhouse 1970. I listened to it. The songs are plenty short enough. Energy, man. Total energy. I love the drumming, man. And of course, Ron Ashton is awesome on this album. And Iggy Pop is awesome. I just wish it had more production, and I wish these songs would develop more, and they just don't. But the first song on this album, man, the very first song from this album is so amazing, man. I love Down on the Street. I love that song because it's got all these nice parts in it. Loose, it's got some parts I kind of dig it. And of course, TVI is energetic punk rock. But Dirt really slows this thing down in a, I don't know, like a weird grungy blues. Oh man, I would have loved to go back in time and produce this album. Remix, remaster, everything by Clark the Shark at 1-800-449-8255. But I was only 4 or 5 years old. I turned 5 April 27, 1970. And this album came out not that long after Clark the Shark turned 5 in 1970. And I went to kindergarten at Newton School September 1970 to June 1971. And this album right here was already out when Clark the Shark was 5, turning 6, 1970-71. And, you know, when I went and got into punk and indie and alternative and grunge, you know, Black Flag and the Stooges' first album, when I took home the Stooges Funhouse and tried to like it, you know, it wasn't like the Velvet Underground. Eventually, I liked that album. The Stooges Funhouse, even right now, I get mad and frustrated when I play this album because it could have been so much better. That being said, this album is way ahead of its time, just like that other Stooges album, 1969. And of course, Raw Power kind of puts it all together and puts it all in perspective. But of course, David Bowie wrecked the album with just a horrible mix and just terrible production. And I think later on it was all remixed, remastered, and sounded better. You know, there's just, of course, just, you know, amazing, amazing moments. You know, Search and Destroy on Raw Power. But Iggy and the Stooges Funhouse is a monument to punk rock, man. Grunge, indie, garage rock. Way ahead of its time in 1970. A lot of energy. And like it or not, this album started a lot of shit. And even the people who love this album will say, oh, it could have been so much better. And there's something this album does not have that that first Stooges album had. There's no denying that. This album's problematic. All being said, with all due respect, all said and done, there's something about the way ahead of its time energy of the Stooges Funhouse that I almost gotta love this album, and on a scale of 1 to 10, they give it like an 8, because the picture of energy, the perception that this album is great is really strong. But if you break down and listen to this album, my friend, I don't know who you are out there, you might not think this album is so great. But I think you're gonna love, man. I know you're gonna love these songs. Well, you know, gets all these great reviews. But I don't think it deserves it, man. You know, 5 stars and all this. I would have given this thing like a 3, or, you know, I wouldn't given it a 2. But Down on the Street, man. Iggy and the Stooges. Down on the Street saves this album because it's such an amazing song. You know, and Loose and TVI got a lot of energy. Dirt slows it down. I love 1970. Come on, man. It's 1970. You know, and Funhouse is, Funhouse is Funhouse, man. It's a long song. Interesting. And LA Blues, of course. Some of it almost sounds a little like the Doors, or there's like saxophone. It's weird, man. But I just think this album, as great as it is, and way, way ahead of its time in 1970, I say the same thing I say in 2023 about this album that I said in 1983, in 1993, and, long ago. I play these songs on drums, every one of these songs, and I'd be like, okay, where's the bridge? Where's the chorus? Where's the hook? Where's the intro? Except for Down on the Street, which is really organized and kicks ass. The rest of this album just leaves me confused. At 1-800-449-8255, but I love the energy. And I wish someone back in 1970 would have come along and said, you know what? I'll produce you guys, Stooges. And we're going to pull some hooks, choruses, some changes, throw in some minor chords, throw in some shit. And I think David Bowie tried to do that with the Stooges. But I would love, had I been older, I would have loved it. At 1-800-449-8255, I would have loved to have produced a fourth Stooges album instead of, all the David Bowie, Iggy Pop, stuff, kind of like Lou Reed. Same thing, Bowie doing the Lou Reed thing. Although, the Lou Reed stuff, like Transformer, is killer, man. And I don't think Iggy Pop ever rose to that level. Although Raw Power, Search and Destroy is rad, man. It's fucking awesome. At 1-800-449-8255. But instead of Iggy Pop going solo with The Idiot and all those albums with Bowie and all that, I wish there was a fourth and a fifth Stooges, in 1978, produced by Clark the Shark. I just would have walked in the room 13 years old and be like, I know Dave Alexander's gone, you guys, but Clark the Shark going to play bass. I'm only 13 in 1978, and I'm going to produce the Stooges, and we're going to make a melodic, grungy, punky album. Maybe 1977 when I'm 12. I'm like, come on, Stooges. Clark the Shark's in the cut. Let me get behind that console, behind the glass, and I'm going to record Iggy Pop at 1-800-449-8255. Of course I couldn't do that. I was 12. I was 13 in 1977, 78. But who knows? 1987, 88, Sharks 22, 23, and Iggy Pop and the Stooges, the Ashtons, and Iggy Pop, and some new bass player. Man, I would have loved it if the Stooges could have connected with the late 70s, could have connected with the 90s better, than just being old legends from long ago. At 1-800-449-8255. But we'll never know now, will we, my friends? We will never know about this amazing band with Iggy Pop and the Stooges, who only had 3 albums. Really only 2. But, 3 albums, the Stooges. There could have been so much more. Dave Alexander died in 1975, but God rest his soul, man. That's a bummer. That's sad. But I always wonder, how much better could the Stooges Funhouse have been if Clark the Shark wasn't 5 years old? I wasn't born in 1965. Maybe I could have been born in 1945, and I'd be 25, producing the Stooges in 1970, Funhouse. I would love, man, to just pull some chord changes, hooks, and make this into a double album. 1-800-449-8255. All being said and done, man. Loose, TVI, Down on the Street, man. It's legendary shit for just noisy garbage, man. Just, I mean, the first album's noisy garbage, but it's interesting noisy garbage. Honestly, man, to me, Clark the Shark, just Down on the Street is it. You know, I love Loose, I love TVI, I love Dirt, I love 1970, but I just remember, man, even at home in headphones, trying to play this album and trying to learn all these songs. I was like, just give me. I need another cup of coffee, man, because I'm either falling asleep or going insane or losing my focus or my train of thought or my concentration. But this album sounds like not like they were on speed or coke. It's almost like they drank a bunch of coffee with Valium in it or something. Like, and there's like, okay, we're full of energy. Let's go. You know, like 1-800-449-8255. You listen to this album, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. Iggy and the Stooges Funhouse 1970. It's way ahead of its time. It's full of energy, but I'm not so sure if it's full of melody. But maybe that's not what it was meant to do. Maybe it's just a grimy, grungy, sludgy hard rock album, man. It's definitely that. It's definitely a statement, too. And it's got this perception thing, man. Like, it is perceived. Like, when you think of the Stooges Funhouse, it's perceived as greatness. I mean, whether it is or isn't, or, you know, but for better or for worse, man, take it or leave it, there's something way, way, way ahead of its time and amazing about the Stooges Funhouse nonetheless. And you just heard the word, a very accurate review from Clark the Shark at 1-800-449-8255 from the golden EIB Sharkerphone. And I just gave you the testimony, the word, about the Stooges Funhouse 1970. Not as good as the Stooges in 1969, I Want to Be Your Dog, We Will Fall. No way, man. John Cale produced that album, so you know that's awesome. But this one could have been so much better. And I'm Clark the Shark. And I'm out of here, baby. Peace.